Hello everybody, welcome to ASL, Ahmedabad School of Linguistics, and I'm your host Ronak Vaidya. So in previous session, we have learned pronunciation. And in today's session, we are going to learn the second most important thing, structure. Now what do I mean by the term structure? So see, it doesn't matter which grammar topic you learn in which level, whether A1 or A2 or B1 or B2 or C1 or C2. Ultimately, what are you going to do with that grammar? According to me, only two things are possible. Either you will make sentence or you will make a question. Is there any other thing possible? I guess no. Okay. So in today's session, or rather should I say starting from today's session, we will lay our foundation of sentence making and question making. Now when I talk about sentence making, so every sentence normally comprises of three basic stuff. There are further more stuff as well. Okay. Normally they are referred to as parts of speech. Okay. But the three most common components are subject, verb, and object. That to object, without object also we can make sometimes sentence, but without subject and verb we can never make sentence. So they are the most important part of any sentence. So in today's session, we are going to learn those things. So let's start. First of all, subjects. So just like in English, we have different types of subjects. I, you, he, she, it, we, they, all those stuff. The same subjects we have in German as well. So let's first learn how to say those subjects in German. How to say I, how to say you, how to say he, she, it, and so on and so forth. So let's learn. So, I, ich. Ich means I. Du means you, singular, informal. Sie, you, singular, formal. Sie, es, he, she, it. Wir, we. Ihr, you, plural, informal. Sie, you, plural, formal. Once again, sie, they. So these are our 8 subjects. So once again, ich, du, sie, sie, es, wir, ihr, sie, sie. Now, there are certain nuances in this. Okay. But before I move on to those nuances, let me tell you one thing. See, whenever you note down these subjects in your notebook, I highly recommend you to note them down just like the way I have written. 4 on half on the left hand side and half on the right hand side. So we total have 8 subjects, and the way I have written them, 4 on the left hand side and 4 on the right hand side. And as you can see, the way why I have done it is on the left hand side they all are singular, and on the right hand side they all are respective plurals, so that it's easier to remember the subjects and it's easier to remember the plural of one subject. So plural of I is we, so ich is wir, so that way it becomes easier to learn the subjects. So please, I request you to follow that. Okay, it will help you a lot in the future. Plus, if you do it, you will also avoid the common mistake that some students make because as you can see here, there are 2 different types of you, informal and formal. In English we don't have such thing. Okay, and so often students get confused between these 2 different you plural form, ihr and sie. And if you want to avoid, if you have written it this way, then you will be able to avoid those errors. So give it a try. Now, moving on to nuances. So first of all, as I just now mentioned, we have 2 different types of you here, you formal and you informal. Now in English, we don't have such thing. In English, you is you. Correct? So what is this you formal and you informal? Well, in English we don't have it, but in our Indian language, we definitely do have it. Yeah? Like in Hindi, you would say tum and aap. And tum, as we all know, it's informal, and aap is formal. So when do we use which one? So du is similar as tum, and zi is similar as aap. So when do we use do and when do we use sie? So if you are, let's say you are talking to your parents, so what would you use? Obviously aap. So sie. If you are talking to your younger brother or sister, your siblings, younger siblings? Definitely do. If you are talking to your nephew or niece, do. If you are talking to your boss or uncle or auntie or grandparents, do. Z. Okay. If you are talking to somebody, just strolling down the path, an unknown person, a stranger, Z. If you are talking to your boss or uncle or auntie or grandparents, Z. Okay. So I hope it's clear. Now, second nuance. As you can see, we have 4 different types of Z. Here, 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 and here. Now the question comes, and they all have different meaning, like you, she, they. Now the question comes, how do I know which one is which? If there is a sentence written, and in sentence that Z is written, then how would I know whether this Z is you or she or they? Answer is simple. Pay attention. See, if S is capital, as you can see here, so it doesn't matter where the sentence doesn't matter where in the sentence the Z comes. If S is capital, especially if it's in the middle or at the end, and S is capital, then immediately you know that it is you and not she or they. However, the problem still persists. What if this Z is at the beginning of the sentence? As we all know, at the beginning of the sentence, the first letter is always capitalized. So that means even this she and they, the Z form of she and they, even their S will be capitalized. Then how would I know whether it is she or they or you? Partial answer can be given, at least between you and she or you and they. Well, no sentence is ever written in isolation. There is always a context. There are always some sentences before that sentence and there are some sentences after that sentence. So there is always a context. And so from the context, it should always be clear that whether I'm talking to the second person, you, or I'm talking about some third person, she or they. So that also helps. But still, it's not clear completely. How do we know whether this Z is she or they? I hope it's clear. I hope the problem is clear. Okay? Because once you understand the problem, then it's a lot easier to understand the answer. Once again, let me repeat the problem. If in a sentence there is Z, and that Z is at the beginning of the sentence, so with S capital, how do we know whether that Z is you, she, or they? If it's in the middle and if it's capital, then it's pretty easy because then only you can be capital. Okay. But if it's at the starting, then even she and they, their S can also be capital. Then how do we know? So stay tuned. Okay. We'll solve that mystery in today's lecture itself. Okay. As we progress along the lecture. So that's it for the subjects. I hope it's clear. So we have taken care of the subject part, the subject component of the sentence. So as I said, we have subject, verb and object. So we have taken care of the subject. We have 8 subjects. Once again, ich, du, sie, sie, wir, ihr, sie, sie. Moving on to the second component and more important component, verb. So just like in English, in German also we have 2 types of verbs, regular verb and irregular verbs. So what is the, first of all, before we move on to the regular verbs and irregular verb, the most important part here is that to understand what is the meaning of the term regular. Now the word regular, it is derived from the French word règle, which means rule, law, niyam. So regular means anything that follows the rule is regular. Now which rule? We don't know. We don't care. Some rule. So once again, regular means anything that follows the rule. So by that logic, regular verb means a verb which follows the rule. Let's just stretch this thought a bit. So let's say I tell you a generalized verb V. There is a verb V, abstract, okay? A generalized verb V. And I'm telling you it's a regular verb. By the very definition of being a regular verb, it means it will follow some rules. because it's a regular verb. By the very definition of regular verb says a verb which follows the rules. But now, for the verb to follow some rules, first of all, there should be some rules or a set of rules. That okay, if I can say, okay, these are a set of rules, and if a particular verb is following this rule, then it is regular, and if a particular verb is not following this rule, then it is irregular. Okay, so what are those rules? Well, those rules are called rules of conjugation. Once again, let's understand the terminology. Rules of conjugation. What is the meaning of the term conjugation? To conjugate is to join any two things, to mix any two things. Now, what are we joining here in a sentence making? We are joining the subject and the verb. It's like they are getting married. Okay. So, subject and the verb. So, this process of joining of the subject and the verb, this process is called conjugation. And when this conjugation happens, the verb form, it gets modified. The verb form, it gets altered. And the rules according to which this verb form gets modified or altered, those rules are called rules of conjugation. Once again, let me repeat. What is a conjugation? Conjugation is a process of joining of the subject and the verb. And when this conjugation occurs, then what occurs? The verb form, it gets modified or altered or changed. And this verb form will get modified, fine. But the rules according to which it will not modify randomly. Okay? It will follow certain pattern, it will follow certain rules. And those rules according to which this verb form is getting modified is called rules of conjugation. Let me give you an example so that it's concretely clear in your mind. In English also we have rule of conjugation, you know. So let's take the verb play in English. So I play, you play, he, she, it plays. Let's take another verb, go. So I go, you go, he, she, it goes. So in English we had a rule that whenever you use a verb with he, she, it, you have to add s or es. Okay. So similarly, in English we had just one rule. So as we see, with what kind of subject we use, the verb form gets altered. So in English we had just one rule. In German, it's simply that we have 8 subjects and 8 rules. That's it. Nothing much difference. Okay. So let's move ahead and learn those rules of conjugation. Now, in German, 99.9% of the time, the verb is always going to end in en. You remove that en, you remove that en, and then whatever is left is called stem. Stem. Stem means stem, root, base. So once again, how do we find stem? You remove that en, and then whatever is left is called stem. Now, the rule. So for example, this verb here, gehen, the stem is ge. Gehen means to go. And so the stem is ge if I remove en. Now, the rule is for ish, it is always stem plus e. So if I have to conjugate this verb, gehen, then ish would be stem ge and then e. So ich gehe means I go. Du, stem and then st. So gehst. So du gehst. You go informally. Sie, infinitive. Infinitive means verb entirely in its original form. No change whatsoever. Okay. So Sie gehen. You go formally. Sie, es. Stem plus t. So geht. So he, she, it goes. Wir, infinitive. So wir gehen. We go. Ihr, stem plus So gate. So you go, plural informal. Z infinitive. So Z gehen, you go, plural formal. And Z gehen. So once again, they go. Now here, if you have paid attention, here itself is the solution of the problem that we just few minutes ago mentioned. That how do I know in a sentence, if there is Z at the beginning of the sentence, then how do I know whether it is she or they or you? Partially we already answered. How do we differentiate between second person and third person from the context? Now we had still difference, you had still the confusion between the third person, that is the she form and the they form. And so as you can see, if that Z is she, then the verb that will follow it will always have T at the end. And if it is they, then it will always have en at the end. So from the verb form, what kind of verb form is there following the subject Z, we can ascertain whether it is she or you or they. I hope it's clear. Now, here at this point of time, I would like to give you some homework. Okay, so you can see here some verbs. What you have to do is you have to conjugate each and every one of this verb. Okay, so this is what you do. So for example, this verb, what is this? Machen. Machen means to do or to make. So in your notebook, please note down, machen means to do or to make. And then you do this entire process for this verb. Similarly, so this process is called conjugation. So you do this entire conjugation for the verb machen. And similarly, you do it for all the other verb. Let's do one for example. So for machen, so ich mache, du machst, because Stamm is mach, machst, sie machen, sie es macht, wir machen, ihr macht, sie machen, and sie machen. So similarly, you do this conjugation for all the verbs which are mentioned here. Okay. However, let me tell you one thing. There are two verbs here in the last column, heißen and arbeiten. They will have some exception. Now it's your job to tell me what are those exceptions. So that is to say, they are regular verbs, let me tell you. But while conjugating them, at some point, in some subject, they will not follow the rules. And you will feel that. Just use your common sense. So your job is to tell me that where those exceptions will occur and why do you think that why at that particular, with those particular subjects, the exception will occur. Now obviously there will be exception, so there will be something new. And what will be that new thing? I will tell you. Okay. So just do the conjugation of all these verbs and please be aware of the conjugation of those two verbs of heißen and arbeiten. Keep this thing in mind and let me know where those exception will be for those two verbs and why do you think the exception will be there. Once you know it, you will understand the language learning does not have to be of rote learning, mugging up stuff. It is pure common sense. Then you will not have to mug up the rules. And you can apply that same logic in future as well, in other verbs where certain similar situation occurs. Till then, bye-bye.